Good
Hello.
afternoon, Internet. Welcome to Tech Bugs and Rock and Roll,
Yes.
a weekly live streamed interactive video comment based ramblecast.
Hello, Origami Marie, our most faithful listener. I can't remember a week when
If we
Marie
if
has
we had
not
a
been
number
in the
one
chat.
fan,
It would be
then yes.
Origami Marie. Thank you for your dedication to
Hello.
listening to us talk rubbish.
Yes, welcome to the show. In a dramatic break with tradition, we have a whole bunch of topics we actually want to talk about this week.
We
and
actually do.
we put
It's
them all
quite
on a
scary.
board and then went, that is quite a lot of stuff.
Well, we've had
So-
2 weeks of not talking about anything to each other because I
Truth.
had Woody on last week. We had an amazing show, really, really good show last week. And then the week before that, you had Diana on, and I've listened to that. That was that's actually the only one where I've listened to the full episode. But yes, that was really interesting as well. So there's Eli. Hey, Eli. So yes, but no, we have an enormous list of stuff, and there's the most important one I would like to get out of the way right at the start, which is I was watching. This isn't Tech Bugs or Rock and Roll, but yesterday I was watching the Great British Menu, which it's a cooking show, but it's a bunch of Michelin starred and kind of like the top chefs from around the country, and they have regional heats where they get together and they prepare a menu for a banquet that's going to be happening later this year, and it's judged by so in the sort of first 2 episodes of each week, it's judged by a professional chef, usually a previous winner. Anyway, and then it goes through to a sort of celebrity panel at the end of the week. But this guy was decorating these tiny little desserts, the kind of desserts that you get in Michelin restaurants, and he was sprinkling something on it, and the person watching was like, what are those? And he went, oh, they're dried pollen grains. And they're like, how do you get those? And he goes, we harvest them off the legs of bees. And I was just, how do you get a bee to hold still so that you can harvest grains of pollen off its legs? So that then raised the horrible possibility that they're just removing the legs from the bees, which I'm guessing they're probably not.
So so there's this thing where it's like, I know nothing about this. I know
Yes.
nothing about beekeeping. I know nothing about harvesting. I know nothing about nothing. But like in the course of having just a well-rounded general education, I sort of know how bees work because I know what they're for and what they do and what will happen if there aren't any. Because the whole point about bees is that they go into the one flower looking for the nectar, and while they're in there, their legs get covered in the pollen, and then they go to another flower looking for nectar, and the pollen comes off because they brush up against things. So as Eli has just commented in the chat, I bet that you just put up a fake flower and put a little bit of nectar in it, and the bees go, oh, look, a flower, and they go over, and in the course of drinking the nectar out of the fake flower, they probably leave pollen on it, but I do not think it involves tiny trousers.
I want it to be tiny trousers. That was my theory.
Putting trousers on a bee sounds like a very hard job that probably involves quite a lot of getting stung and yields relatively modest amounts of pollen at best.
See, you say that, right? But that then segues. Well, it's a segue. We don't normally have segues. That segues quite nicely into the thing that Microsoft announced yesterday. Have you seen this Majorana quantum chip?
I saw something, but I don't know what it is. Although it doesn't have the word Copilot in it, so I'm desperately hoping that this is Microsoft coming up with.
Do not watch the announcement video.
Well, obviously, it's got to be about quantum Copilot, because if it hasn't got Copilot in it, they're not allowed to sell it by order of Satya Nadella.
Yes,
but just maybe. They're going, this is actually useful. So
essentially, they've come up with a new particle. So there was a mathematically theorized particle called or a state of matter, or something called a topological state, and it's half an electron, is how they describe it, and so it can either each qubit in this thing can either be nothing or it can be an electron. And it's like got charge at either end of a strip of stuff, but in between there's nothing, and so they are self-error correcting, which is the holy grail for quantum.
Microsoft today introduced Majorana 1, the world's first quantum chip powered by a new topological core architecture that it expects will realize quantum computers capable of solving meaningful industrial scale problems in years, not decades.
Yeah. And so their assertion is that they can manufacture chips that are small enough to fit in a smartphone. You can't put them in a smartphone because they still need to be chilled to sort of colder than outer space temperatures.
Well, that's not a fucking problem. It's England in February. Just go outside and you can run your quantum chip in the relentless, cold, bony grasp of the Fimble winter.
What does it take to make Dylan curse on the podcast? February, that's what it takes.
This time every year, I look at this soggy little island with its. Apparently, it's so cold here that people from Siberia move to England for work, and then in February they're like, "I'm going back to Siberia because this is too cold."
Yes. Yeah, no, it is. It's because we lost the Gulf Stream, so that's not keeping us extra warm anymore. But anyway, the way that this links to the tiny trousers, because I did promise this was a segue, is the manufacturing process. They are literally putting these things together by placing atoms, and I suspect this is something to do with doping, and you don't actually kind of pick up an atom and put it somewhere, but you create a place that the atom wants to be, and then you hope that the right kind of atom sits there, and it's like aluminium and iridium or something.
Exactly like harvesting pollen from bees.
Exactly like harvesting pollen from bees. There you go. See, it was a perfect segue. Yes. But yeah, so the thing that they're sort of predicting they're going to be able to do within years, not decades, is put 1 million of these qubits on a single chip that is like the size of a postage stamp, which is insane.
Yeah.
Because if you look at how many qubits does it take, every time you add a qubit, it doubles the computing power. And so like 4 qubits has double the computing power of 3. And they're talking about putting 1 million on one chip. And then you carry on reading and you go, well, how many have you got on a chip so far? 8. 8. And you're like, okay. So it's a scale thing now, basically. But it does look quite exciting. It does.
If there is one thing that the tech industry does incredibly well, it is to extrapolate that, hey, if we went from 0 to 8 in 17 years, it can only take another couple of years to go from 8 to 1 million.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's complete. That's waterfall project management prediction time.
Yeah.
Yes, it was 1 million scrum points to get 8. And it'll be 13 to get to 1 million.
I mean, I'm guessing that the first one took most of the work.
Yeah,
so
probably.
Yeah. I wish them well, and I'm sure that million qubit topological quantum computers in liquid nitrogen cooled mobile telephones is exactly what will fix everything that's currently wrong with the world we live in.
Yes, yeah, But I mean, some of the stuff that they're saying it would be able to work on. Is so Origami Marie is saying, so public key encryption is toast when the current sort of very large prime numbers encryption, it's going to be able to crack that in seconds, and so we're going to have to switch to using quantum encryption, which means people will have to buy these chips from Microsoft to do the encryption. But that's a thing to worry about when it actually happens. The thing that was most interesting to me is they're struggling to get the atoms to settle in the right place, but the problem with doing that is a quantum problem. And so if they can get enough of them on a single chip, they can use them to solve the problem of getting more of them on a chip. And I love that kind of recursive sort of iterative thing. If we can make a computer this powerful, then we can use it to build the computer that is the next level of powerful, and so on and so on.
I read somewhere that CPU design is now, it's like 4 frames of reference removed from a human being able to understand it.
Yeah.
Like there was the first, like the Intel 8088 chip that a human being put this there and that one there, and that one goes in here, and then you switch it on and it works.
Yes.
And then like there was then a generation where they're like, well, without those chips, we'd never have been able to design these chips. And then that one, and now they're just like, yeah.
I mean, they use AI to do the layout now. They're just going to go, we need these transistors in this sort of configuration. Can you work out how to carve that onto silicon? But yes.
And it goes, yes, processing, reasoning, arranging chips on silicon. Here you go. Here's a great layout for all of the semiconductors on your new piece of silicon. And you look at it and you go, that doesn't work. 3 of those are missing and 4 of them are wired into themselves. Oh, you're perfectly right. I do apologize for the oversight. Let's have another go. And round and round and round we go.
Yes. Yeah. But so we've obviously triggered Eli. They are very excitable in the chat. But yeah, one of the things that they've mentioned is this genuinely could, like Millennial, save the world if we figure out the whole nitrogen thing that plants do using quantum chemistry. So this is a really amazing thing, is that plants can absorb nitrogen. We have no idea how they do it. And so our fertilizer, our current sort of chemical fertilizer, is based entirely on brute forcing this. And if we can model how plants are doing this themselves naturally, and then we can synthesize much more effective, much less toxic fertilizer, that would potentially mean we wouldn't have to leave fields lying fallow 1 out of every 3 years and that sort of thing. But there is a bunch of stuff that this could do. And potentially cell aging is something that also happens there are quantum aspects to that. And so we could live forever.
That would be... Yes. Which is... Can we hibernate through February when we do, please?
Well, I mean, if we could live forever, actually, we could probably figure out if there's some kind of quantum process involved in animals that hibernate, slowing down their metabolism and going and wrapping up warm in a cave. Then maybe we could do some gene splicing stuff. And
every year about this point, I get very jealous of bears, because bears basically, they go out in October and they eat all the salmon they can find until they're basically spherical, and they have Fat Bear Week on the internet, and then they go and fall asleep in a cave, and then they wake up in the spring and they're skinny and they're like, yay, let's go out and enjoy the summer now. And like, that is a much better way of doing this. Hello, Carl. Carl, I have a question for you. When do you get into Hull for DDD North, and are you around for dinner on Friday night? Because I get into Hull about 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and looking for dinner plans. And it's got to the point now, 10 years ago, I would have just have gone on Twitter and tagged all the speakers in it, and we would have got a dinner plan of that. But you can't do that anymore, because it's been fragmented like a sort of post-digital Tower of Babel.
So now you're just going to use our podcast to organize your social life. Okay, that's fine. I'm good with that.
So speaking about processors, I've been shopping, because at some point in the relatively near future, I am going to upgrade the workstation that I use to do stuff, because it's quite a good computer. Like, it'll play Baldur's Gate 3 no problem at all. But when you're trying to make programming training videos, which involves running Visual Studio, which is one of those programs that you're like, yeah, you shouldn't really share this with anything. It wants a machine all to itself. And Adobe After Effects, which is also, don't run this on a machine that's doing anything else. It gets a little bit crunchy. And so I've been shopping around, and there's a company called Quiet PC who I buy my hardware from, because they're nice people. And if you order things that don't work, they send you an email going, those won't work. Do you want these instead? Which I'm a big fan of.
From them in the past. They are very good.
And I was looking at like the latest lineup of Intel CPUs, and it's sort of like, it's very confusing to me, because I think what has happened is, like, I used to be like, you spend more money, you get more gigahertz. That's just how it works. And raw kind of clock speed was very much a measure of how much work the computer can do. And if you want to do more work in the same amount of time, then you get more megahertz or more gigahertz or whatever. But now it's like, there's TDP, thermal something is a factor, and so you can spend a lot more money for a chip that on the face of it goes a lot slower, except apparently you can make it go faster, and when it's going slower, I'm confused. It is confusing. Don't know what to go for.
And I mean, they changed their whole naming AMD and Intel both did this
Yeah.
at around the same time that Microsoft started putting the word Copilot on everything. Because, yeah, it used to be that you had CPU cores. You had cores that were very good at doing binary addition and subtraction, and that was it.
Yeah.
And now you have AMD are building RDNA 4 cores, I think, into their latest, so GPU cores. And there is now one of the sort of latest generation of AMD chips. Its rendering performance is better than a 3080 or something, which is insane.
You get pollen off a bee by making it go through a narrow hole. So the pollen blobs get scraped off their legs. Marie has searched images. So now there we go.
Okay. So
Peter's popped up and said, "Hey, Peter, so just go AMD instead." So the problem.
Go on, tell AMD, Peter why you can't do that.
The problem, apparently, at the moment, AMD can't run 128 gigs of RAM at full speed because it can't, because it gets all its bits tangled up and falls over on its face. And I want 128 gigs of RAM because I frankly want 100. Actually, I want a terabyte of RAM is what I want. But I don't have enough space in my house for an IBM Z95 mainframe.
Yeah.
So
you deserve 128 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, and I'd use it for sensible things.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, processing through a video in a 4K video in Premiere or After Effects will happily use at least more than half of that, which is kind of the point. It's 64 isn't enough.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know whether it's a fault in the chips or the chipset or the motherboards or whatever that's going on with the AMD things, but it is an issue.
Yeah.
And then you got these new Intel like Core i9 Ultra, whatever they're calling them now. You got Ultra and these other things, and so it's got this many performance cores and this many efficiency cores, and at least now the efficiency cores in the latest version have AVX 512 for doing the SIMD instructions, because the previous generation they didn't, and that meant Intel's new thing that they'd invented was available on AMD's chips but not Intel's chips. And then they've also building ARC GPU cores into some of them but not all of them, and so that's when you get the thing where the TDP is higher, the gigahertz is lower, and the price is more, and you're going, but why? And then because of Microsoft and Copilot and OpenAI and everything, they've now all got all these neural cores, whatever those are called, tensor cores or something. And you have to have 45,000 or whatever it is, 45 tops of NPU in order for Copilot to work, which to me sounds like an excellent argument for having less than 45 tops of NPU. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants AI in everything. It's just
no. I do want AI in everything. I just want actual like intelligent assistance in everything that actually works.
I mean, I would pay very good money for Jarvis.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. An AI that actually kind of goes, "Why are you still eating your toast? You've got a meeting."
Yeah.
And was able to sort of just. So it would be running locally, so that my data would be just staying inside my luxury Malibu clifftop compound, and it would be watching me constantly, listening to me constantly, and just monitoring me, and is just gently coaching me through my ADHD, and compensating. It would be brilliant. But no, we can't have nice things.
No, we can't have nice things. But
and one of the others, this is not something to talk about, but it's just a ranty thing. But there is a man called Mark Cuban, which is kind of a shame.
Yes.
And he is now on Blue Sky, which is even more of a shame. He should have stayed on Twitter. And he very confidently and authoritatively, in a thought leader sort of way, posted that an uneducated person who knew how to use an LLM could outperform somebody with an advanced degree in any given field. and I had to comment on. I don't normally sort of respond to these people, but I just felt compelled to point out that earlier that day I had asked Copilot in something. It was through pieces, but it was using the ChatGPT Copilot stuff at the back. I was kind of like, how do you make internal things visible to another assembly? And it told me about the internals visible to attribute, which is from .NET 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I went, can you do it in the project file? And it showed me the hacky way of adding attributes to an assembly in the project file from 5 years ago, because there is now an internals visible to attribute that you can put in an item group.
Yep.
But yeah, Copilot didn't know about that, apparently.
Yeah.
So,
I did.
Yes.
I have an advanced degree in software engineering.
Yeah.
I read a thing yesterday that I thought was, it's not new writing, but it was a very, very interesting point. It was talking about chess as a sort of useful proxy for human expertise. And it was saying that if you take an average, a person in the street who's qualified, like a university graduate who's not a chess player, and you explain the rules of chess, and they play 100 games against a 5-year-old, they will win them all. They will win 100 games out of 100 with no chess training or, strategy training or anything. But if you then take that same person and put them against a tournament-ranked chess grandmaster, the grandmaster will win 100 games out of 100 every single time.
Yes.
And best case scenario is once or twice they might have to stop and think about it.
Yes.
And so the difference in proficiency between a grandmaster and a normal person is the same as the degree of proficiency between a normal person and a 5-year-old child.
I'm not sure those maths work.
I do.
I don't know.
And so you take, the extrapolation is chess is easy to measure because, it's a perfect information game with a very, very rigorous and well understood ranking system. And it's basically saying, imagine that you take somebody who has spent 10 years studying, I don't know, software engineering. And you're like, okay, so we got someone who's been doing software engineering for 10 years versus a normal grown-up with a degree in philosophy or, whatever. And that person's probably like, well, they can't be that much better than me. But the software engineer is going to be as much better than that person at software engineering as the normal person is than a 5-year-old child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
But no, that reminds me just tangentially of that. Do you remember they did a poll of men?
The tennis
capital
thing.
M. Could you take a point off Serena Williams in a 2-set match? And I was kind of like, I think I could, but only because over the course of serving, how many times would Serena have to serve? 6 times 15, 30, 40, 24. No, she'd have to serve 24 times. There's a reasonable chance that she would double fault within that time. So I said that, and then the person I was talking to about it went, do you really think Serena Williams would need to serve at full pelt to get the ball past you? And I'm kind of like, oh yeah, no, you're right. It would be like the first serve could be the second serve and it would still go straight past me every time. And there's no way the only hope I think I would have is I've played people who are better than me, and the first time I serve and the ball actually, I serve successfully, which I can do fairly consistently, it falls so short of where they're standing that they can't get to it. But even that, I'm not sure would work on Serena. So, no. But no, the thing about sort of Mark Cuban and stuff is Microsoft have also launched this Muse thing, which is, for some reason, rather than just creating a game using Unreal or Unity or something, you tell an AI what the game is supposed to be like, and then it can generate frames on the fly and respond to controller input, and so it's like making the game up at 24 frames a second while you're playing it. And somewhere in this article about this utterly pointless, stupid, why run games efficiently on an iPhone when you could run them inefficiently on a supercomputer. There's a quote from Microsoft, who have laid off a crap load of developers from their various Xbox game acquisitions over the last couple of years, saying, oh no, we're not using AI to replace people. And what I've noticed, that we're using it to make people more productive. And you go, but you're not producing more stuff. So yes, you're not completely replacing people, like the abstract concept of people, but you are replacing an awful lot of individual people, because you're trying to get it to the point where you can make Dark Souls 6 with one guy sat there describing Dark Souls 6 into Copilot. And so, yeah, whenever you hear these people saying, oh no, we're not looking to replace humans, you put the word all before humans, and then that makes what they're saying true.
I think I'm sort of reaching the point where I can see AI tools, language models, whatever, they are going to get quite good at churning out anything which required no imagination. And if you're doing something that a bunch of people have done 1,000 times before, and it's not new and it's not clever, and there are definitely things like, we need to scaffold a login system for this website. It's like, well, that's not solving an interesting problem. Just, don't balls it up.
Yeah.
And so things like that, I think it's going to do fine. But, that's like we used to have to write assembly jump routines after putting the appropriate arguments on the stack. And now we have function calls. And, there was no imagination in doing that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I'm, sort of waiting for a point where the whole world has just become so overwhelmed with AI-generated slop that, somebody stands up with an actual guitar, or they write an actual book, or they make a little game in a weekend that's got real human imagination and passion and creativity, and everyone's like, this is so good, it's amazing.
Yes.
It'd be like when you drink a soft drink that's actually got sugar in it and realize that everything's been replaced with artificial sweetener for the last 5 years, and you hadn't noticed. It's just all a bit disappointing and crap.
Yes.
And then you drink proper like Mexican Coca-Cola and go, oh, this is so good.
Yeah.
So
no, it's
AI, artificial sweetener for creativity. That's all it is.
Yeah. It is. I mean, that's a very good analogy, actually. Artificial intelligence is to actual intelligence as artificial sweetener is to sugar.
Yeah.
So yes. So what have you been up to anyway?
Has
it been making you happy?
Yeah. So I'm making training videos, which I seriously misjudge just how much work is involved in producing high quality training material, and it's one of those things that it's very, very easy to think of all kinds of reasons. It's easy to torpedo yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I need to make a video, which means, one, the code I'm demonstrating needs to be perfect, because once it's in the video, you can't fix it. And writing perfect code is impossible. And so then you're like, right, well, now that I've got the code, which is perfect, I need to make a video of me talking about the code while I write the code and explain the code and demonstrate the code working. And it's quite hard to talk and type at the same time. So you end up going down rabbit holes of, well, how can I automate part of this?
Yeah.
And, I keep having to sort of forcibly drag myself back and go, this is good enough. The thing you are trying to explain here works. It hangs together well. You've explained it all right. It's time to kind of tick the box and move on and do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And, I know from looking at all kinds of different material on all kinds of different platforms that without wanting to single out any names, I've seen some stuff which is just abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody who isn't really very good at explaining stuff, opening up a 1,000-line file and talking you through it line by line, not typing anything, nothing ever gets run. And it's like, I know I can do better than that.
Yeah.
But it's, to me, I'm always very motivated by, to me, a deadline is something with a live audience, because I really enjoy working with live audiences. And if you're late, the audience has gone home, and so you don't get to do the thing today, or indeed ever again. And so it's like, no. this is different. This is you take the time to make it good, but you got to keep doing it, and it's just And that combined with the SAD, the seasonal whatever it is, disorder, defection,
Affective.
depression, seasonal affective, just sad. Just the whole, there hasn't been any warmth or sunshine for months.
I mean, that is one of, I don't know if that's a backronym, but it's if it is, it's the best backronym ever.
Yeah. No, it has been a long, cold winter, and the neurotransmitters are in seriously short supply.
Yes, and this is really helping, by the way, because this is so I have a new camera. I spent quite a lot of money on a camera. I mean, it's still the low end. It's a Sony ZV-E10.
Let's just put that in a frame of reference, because quite a lot of money on a camera. Cameras are one of those things, you can get one that works for $5.
Yes, so it's quite a lot of money compared to that. You
can comfortably spend £50,000 on a camera.
Yeah. So this particular camera was 600 quid with the kit lens, which is useless for making videos. And so then I had to go and spend another just under £400 on a Sigma f1.4 16mm, which does the sort of nice blurry background thing that you can see here just all by itself. Bokeh.
Japanese.
Yes.
Bokeh. It means fuzziness.
Yes.
And the Japanese word for jet lag literally translates as time fuzziness.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
So Stuart's popped up. So this is one of the things that I was going to talk about briefly. There's a Visual Studio Code extension called Presentation Buddy, which looked like it was going to solve this problem beautifully, because what it lets you do is define all your source code and then basically automate Visual or VS Code, typing out lines of code and adding and saving files and all this kind of stuff. And what I sort of realized, because I contributed some stuff to that, I played around with it, and it kind of almost did everything I wanted. And I was like, if this could do X, Y, and Z, it would be perfect. So I added code to do X, Y, and Z and got them plugged in and went, it's not perfect. This isn't what I need after all, because it's too constrained. So the system I've actually got, which I have just blogged about, and in a minute we're going to talk about blogging, because blogging is cool again, is auto hotkey. And what I've built is a set of auto hotkey macros that will take whatever's on the clipboard and they'll type it in. And so what the sort of workflow that I'm working with is you pause the camera, so you pause OBS, and then you type in the next couple of lines and get them right. Because I tend to find when I'm trying to explain stuff as I go along, whatever I had prepared in advance suddenly isn't good enough anymore. Because it's like, oh no, I should have explained that. I want to talk about that. So there needs to be a bit of scope to kind of go off script. And so you pause the recording, bang in a couple of lines, like maybe 3 or 4 minutes worth of footage, and then cut it onto the clipboard and then resume the recording. And then what I've done is got it set up so if I tap one of the extended function keys, it types it line by line. And that to me is kind of the sweet spot, because it means you're not scripting 20 minutes of material in advance, but also you're not typing it one line at a time. You're kind of, I got to get through 2 minutes of stuff. So pause the recording, prep the 2 minutes, and obviously all the code has been done ahead of time. I know what it's going to do and all that kind of stuff. And then you resume it and you're like, right. And you press a key and it goes tip, 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 and it types all that out. And then you just realize there's so many little nuances. Like the latest thing, the thing that I did this morning is if scroll lock is on, it'll trim the strings before it types them. Because if you copy code, the stuff on the clipboard has all the leading tabs in it because you copy it, including the indentation. But then when you type code, you normally don't type the tabs because smart indentation puts them in for you. So if you replay the clipboard into the keyboard buffer, you get twice as many tabs as you need, because Visual Studio goes, hey, I've tabbed that for you. And then you go, tab, tab, tab. And so it's that sort of classic thing of, at what point do you decide, I am not going to spend today refining the tools. I'm going to spend them using the imperfect tools to do the bloody job and produce the output that is the objective of this thing. And oh boy, I could sharpen a saw for a year and never cut down a tree. I love refining the process. And
it's like that XKCD comic where it's like, can you pass the salt? And then it's been it's just a blank thing. And then, what are you doing? I'm inventing a robotic system to pass arbitrary condiments on demand. It's been 20 minutes. Yeah, but it's going to be great. So,
saw, Eli, saw, not a sword, a saw. I could sharpen a saw.
It's just, I don't know what it is. Millennials are obsessed with swords.
I know. I mean, swords are cool.
I mean, they are. Yeah.
But the other thing is, I blogged about this morning because I got it working. I was like, I'm going to put this on my blog. And we've had a ticket on the thing for a while to talk about blogging.
We have.
And I have found it's not perfect. And yes, this is another round of yak shaving rabbit hole exploration. But there is a tool called Sveltia, which is built with Svelte.js. Basically, my headache for a long time. I used to blog with Windows Live Writer, and you want to write a blog post. You open Live Writer, type in your blog post, paste an image, push publish, and go home, and you're done, and it's just finished. And you don't have to make any arbitrary decisions. Which, like, you don't need to choose a file name for the blog post because it's a blog post. It doesn't need a file name.
Yeah,
and And I used to blog quite a lot, and because it was easy. You had a good idea, like 5 minutes, bash something out, publish it. Sometimes I'd put more work and stuff. But I moved everything from Blogger to Jekyll and static pages, hosted on GitHub, which I love. It's a fantastic platform. It's fast and it's free, and it can't get hacked because it doesn't run anything. And did all this about 5 years ago. And basically it killed blogging, because now if I want to write a blog, or till recently, if I want to write a blog post, I'm like, right, let's clone the repository, open it up in VS Code, choose a file name for the new blog post, which has to be based on the timestamp. So I need to know, am I going to publish it today or yesterday or tomorrow? It just And so I've been looking around. What I want is, I've got a good idea, open up my phone, Bluetooth keyboard, type in the thing, push publish, and it's done. And somebody pointed me to a thing called Decap, which is a content management system originally built at Netlify that is a JavaScript application that talks directly to GitHub. And so it runs as part of your static website. There's no database, there's no backend. You authenticate it with GitHub, and it puts a token in your browser. And then you write a blog post and you click publish, and it does a git add, git commit, and then your site rebuilds. And this looked like the perfect workflow for what I wanted. I just couldn't get the bloody thing to work properly because it needs Netlify. For complicated reasons, you can't log into GitHub from a browser with a client-side application. There has to be a server involved.
Yes.
Because it has to do an OAuth callback where GitHub says, GitHub has to be able to send an HTTP request to something, which goes, yes, it's you, we gotcha. And then it mints the token that gets baked in that you can use in future. But then I discovered that when Netlify basically killed Netlify CMS, Decap was an open source fork of that. But then another project sprung up called Sveltia, as in Svelte.js with an IA on the end. Sveltia CMS, which is basically, we're going to solve the same problem, but we're going to do it again from scratch using different JavaScript. And it's really, really good. And I got it set up, got it plugged in. There's a little script they give you, which is paste this into a Cloudflare worker, and that'll be your authentication server, which is cool because it means it's on, it's Cloudflare, but it's my Cloudflare. So I know every bit of code that my credentials are flowing through in each direction. And I got it up and running. And now if I go to dylanbeatty.net/admin, there's a little login with GitHub button. And once I'm in, it's like, here's all your blog posts, and here's a WYSIWYG editor, and here's the markdown source, and here's a little image upload thing. And there's no database. It's talking to the Git repository in real time. And
I might have to have a look at that.
It is very, very good. Derek Fowler says, are you streaming this on Twitch? If you mean this right now thing that you're watching right now.
Yes, we are.
Yes, it's on twitch.tv/DylanBeatty, I think, this time.
The Reds?
What is the Reds? What is the Reds?
Oh, no. We're old and we're boomers. We don't know about Reds.
I mean, I know, come on, you Reds, just keep your bottle and use your heads, which was Manchester United's attempt at parodying Burning Bridges by Status Quo, which, frankly, good effort, but we do it better.
That's a soccer thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Oh, I think he's talking about the Red, as in the camera, the very, very expensive camera.
Oh, no.
Manufacturers. God, I wish.
Yeah.
That would be nice, have a couple of those. Actually, they do like they're designed as like side cameras, and the idea is that you buy kind of half a dozen of them, and then you can just dot them around your studio, and they connect over Wi-Fi, and then they connect into the Red kind of controller system, and it gives you sort of synchronized video from all these different sources. And those are only about 800 quid without the lens.
I did have a moment the other day when I don't know if this is something that a lot of people in tech find, or a lot of geeks, I don't know, people like us. I have a setup now that I use to record London.net meetups, which is comparable to the setup that video companies charge hundreds of pounds to turn up and use for one evening at an event and then give you the footage.
Yes.
And it's like, where's the point where you're like, this is probably a business now. I mean, I know for a fact I own enough audio gear to run a PA equipment hire company. I just kind of don't want to get into that, but I could. But and it's this tendency to like, if you need to do a thing, you may as well own the tools. And this is something that frustrates me so much about subscription model software. Is the whole, well, you can't. I know you could do that last week, but you can't do it now because your subscription is expired and you don't own the tool, and but I was looking at this little, because I got this portable little setup now. I've got it so it all fits in one backpack, including the tripod, which I was quite happy with. And you plug it in, and you got an HDMI capture running off the laptop, and you got the camera, and you've got the little clip-on mics and everything. And and it's like, is this like, should I be selling this as a service to people that they can pay for? Because,
there's definitely it's one of those things. It's a business is essentially, am I able to do something that other people want to have done, but it's too complicated or time consuming or expensive upfront for them to do it. It's like wedding videographers buying that kind of expensive video camera and then going through the process of editing it all yourself and turning it into this nice thing that someone will then put in its case on a shelf and never ever watch until one of them dies and they want to record kind of sad footage for a Netflix series. But it would be prohibitively expensive to do that yourself on a sort of wedding by wedding basis. But so I think quite possibly. My Matrix screen in the background is quite flickery sometimes, isn't it?
It occasionally has a little moment. Is it doing that for real, or is that the strobing shutter?
No, that it does actually do that when you're looking at it.
It does actually do that, because the real Matrix doesn't do that. Otherwise, it would upset.
Well, it does. It does when Neo kills an agent. So I'm just gonna every time that happens, it means Neo's killed an agent, because
you don't even
Neo is definitely still alive.
So for those of you on the podcast who have no idea what we're talking about, Rendle has a large screen on the wall behind them, which is showing the falling rain green screen Matrix screensaver effect, which still is the coolest screensaver ever screensavered.
Absolutely, so 100%. Yeah, it's on the Mac. And it just kicks in on the lock screen after 3 minutes. And then after 3 hours, it goes away. And the screen just starts cycling through solid colors. And it never stops, which is a weird feature. So I do have to remember to turn it off at the end of the day. But,
I mean, solid color cycling is a thing for preventing stuck subpixels on LCD displays.
Yeah,
because if all your screensaver ever does is green, it's not really saving the blue and the red.
Yeah,
but LCD displays don't really need screen saving because they don't get phosphor burn in. Just like you don't need to defragment your SSDs.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to check out the Sveltia thing though, because
it is very very cool.
My Heath Robinson idea for approaching this, or what do Americans call it? Rube Goldberg for Americans, was I really like Obsidian, the note taking kind of knowledge management tool, and I use it for sort of planning scripts and reports and all that sort of thing. And so I thought I'm going to write an Obsidian plugin that would use like an Azure function or a AWS Lambda or something for the GitHub authentication step. But it would just mean there was a Control-Shift-P to bring up the palette and then publish. And so I can write the post in Obsidian, and then it will go through the process of adding that to the content directory. And then this is one of those things. It's this whole don't roll your own thing, because you think, yes, to upload the markdown file to GitHub repository, and then that will trigger the GitHub action that publishes it to wherever it needs to be published to. And then you think, oh, hang on, what if I include images in there? And then so I've got to find the images and then make sure they get uploaded to the right place. And also different things go in different places for if it's a Hugo blog versus if it's a Jekyll blog and all that sort of thing. And so actually thinking it through, it would probably be quite complicated. And so what I can do instead is spin up that Sveltia thing, set up the Cloudflare worker, because I've got a bunch of stuff on Cloudflare anyway. Write the posts in Obsidian if they're taking a while to write, and then I could do that copy paste thing.
I mean, I have a bunch of websites that are hosted on Jekyll, and I maintain using Obsidian. Linebreakers.band is all marked down in Obsidian. I have a site called grimoire.dylanbeatty.net, which is where I put stuff that I want to remember but doesn't need to be a blog post. I like a whole bunch of stuff. It's just the kind of the immediacy of being able to go right, publish, done. And there's a pretty good GitHub plugin for Obsidian that I use on a bunch of things, but it doesn't work on mobile. So,
which is what, that's kind of the key thing, is you want to be able to jot down a quick idea or observation and just fire it off and stuff. Because I'm resurrecting Rendle.dev, which is my blog that I haven't blogged for 3 years or something. And I got a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about on there. Some of it's kind of, did you know this? And some of it's, please stop making things so complicated, like my talk is going on about. But I'm also planning on starting one up about, so like just a blog about imposter syndrome. Because I did that talk at NDC London, and I've had so many people sort of talking to me about it and reaching out about it and everything. And I've got a lot of stuff that I could say. And so I'm going to start that up. So yeah, that'll be appearing soon. And if I can just set both of them up with this Sveltia thing and stick it on statichost.eu, then yay, that'll work.
Derek Fowler says red camera, which I suspect means Derek Fowler is watching the stream about 15 minutes behind real time. And is replying to something we said 15 minutes ago. And in 15 minutes, we'll go, oh, red camera.
And so MKBHD is all about the red camera. That's Marcus Brownlee, I think, is MKBHD.
Folks, you're absolutely welcome to play along in chat, but it works a lot better if you're watching the stream in as close to real time as you can get it. Otherwise we get messages from the past, and then you get time latency delays. It's like you're talking to Mars.
We will already have gone off and poured ourselves drinks by the time Derek actually hears that. We're sort of 10 minutes to go. I do have to I have an announcement. This episode of Tech Bugs and Rock and Roll is sponsored by Give Rendle a Job. I had a contract. It finished early because I was only supposed to be working 3 days a week, and I worked 5 days a week. And so then 3 months before the end of the contract, they went, "We've used up all your hours." And I was kind of like, "Oh, bugger." So yes, if anyone wants workshops or on performance or gRPC or API building generally, or if anyone wants some consultancy on those things, or .NET migration, I'm talking to a couple of people about helping them to migrate from .NET 4.8 to modern .NET 9. Or if you have some kind of work that you need doing and you want it doing absurdly well, more than the average day rate, but I promise I'm worth it, then please, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm at rendle.dev on Blue Sky. I think I'm rendle.dev with the word dot on LinkedIn. Because yes, removing your first name is one of those. It seems like a really good idea until you come to the next round of job hunting, and then people are just kind of like, why are you just Rendle now? And it's
Oh,
like,
look, we've got comment spam. How exciting! Someone says we can get yeah.
yeah.
Bye
No, you can
bye.
buy.
Except we're using StreamYard, which doesn't have the massive almighty ban hammer.
No, that's
So,
Twitch.
I
Yeah.
know, which I need to get a 6-digit authentication code to sign into. Why is the
Oh,
future
for
so complicated?
Lord's sake. Yes, 2FA is all well and good until you need to ban a bot in the middle of a podcast.
I realized yesterday this is like the ultimate sort of internet user-generated content. Everything is digital, kind of fuck you in both ends. Is I am simultaneously frightened that somebody else is going to get into my digital accounts, and that I'm going to be unable to get into my digital accounts.
Yeah.
Because the number of moving parts that it takes to get to your own stuff, you're looking at it going, if any bit of this stops working, then, you know, but then you're simultaneously like, yeah, but you get those little emails going, hey, here's your Microsoft account code. You're like, I didn't log into Microsoft, not today. Wasn't, no.
Yes, no, I've had a couple of those.
Yeah.
And it is, you do sort of think, oh, thank God. Yeah, so I had a Microsoft Authenticator notification pop up on my phone saying, enter the number. And I was kind of like, no. And that just sends you off going, I'm going to need to change my password and stuff. So, yeah. So, yeah, you mentioned DDD North earlier.
Yes.
What are you doing up there?
I'm going to Hull to talk about how to be a rockstar developer. And
Hurrah for Hull.
I like DDD because, you know, DDD is, I mean, part of the reason I go is because it's fun. The main reason why I make a point of doing as many of the DDD style events as I can is it is a really good place to see new speakers doing good talks and go, all right, that's good. We'll look out for that person. And because once in a while, it's nice when someone says, do we know anyone who could do a really good talk about Zig or can do it? And it's like, yes, actually I do. I know somebody. I saw them do this here. And it's great being able to kind of ping people and go, hey, you remember that thing you did? Because
I just wrote up a kind of little bit for the blog. I've got a talks page on there, and at the bottom there's my speaking journey thing. And it mentions the fact it was actually DDD in Reading. They used to do it at the Microsoft campus. When John Skeet watched me do a talk about C#, and then suddenly I was getting emails from Oradev and CodeMash saying, John Skeet recommended you. And to be able to pay that forward would be a good thing. So I'm not going to North. I am going to get myself down to DDD Southwest. I'm probably not going to speak there unless somebody flakes, in which case I'll be able to kind of go, I can do something. I don't want to take up a slot that somebody else could have. But yeah, I want to go down and see the sort of next generation of speakers and be encouraging and provide support for them in the same way that people provided support for me.
I'm very much in two minds about the whole should you speak or not. And I tend to put in sessions. I tend to put something in, but I also, these are events where I normally book my hotel and train ticket before I know if I'm speaking or not. So I'm going, in any case. And it's a sort of public vote. I put in a couple of things because I'm also aware that they are free to attend. And quite a lot of the events that I speak at now are not free to attend. They are quite expensive to attend. And so on the one hand, you're potentially taking up a spot from somebody. But on the other hand, there might be people out there who would quite like to see these things for real instead of watching them afterwards on YouTube. So, I don't know. But yes, I put some stuff in for Southwest as well. And it is just possible if we get a quorum of people that I might try and do something line breaky after DDD Southwest.
Well, you'll have your bass player there at least.
And Kevlin lives in Bristol, so we'll be in town anyway, even if he's not there.
Certain.
So I think we can probably wrangle something. And DDD Southwest is walking distance from the venue where I played the first concert, the first live gig I ever played in a band,
Oh wow,
which is still there
that'd be
and is
nice.
still open. It's the Louisiana, just the other side of Bristol Bridge. And
Cool.
yeah, so I don't know whether it would be remotely the right thing. Actually, the engine shed where DDD Southwest happens, there is an arts and entertainment venue in the vaults underneath, which is closed for refurbishment at the moment. But
Oh
I'm sort of
no.
keeping an eye on it.
Oh no, I will not be at DDD Southwest because it clashes with NDC Melbourne, which I am
Well, you've made
already
terrible
committed
choices.
to. I've made, well, it wasn't going to be a terrible choice when my plan for Melbourne was turn up and have a week either side of it and stuff. But then with the job going away and the money going away, now I am flying out on the weekend on the Saturday and then leaving again on the Friday. So damn
So
it.
Backpack
All
Vacuum
to
has
hell.
just commented, I'm part of an online meetup. We're looking for people to present something. I'm going to nip this one in the bud. I don't do online talks for free because I hate them.
Yes.
I find presenting online to be an incredibly kind of dispiriting and uninspiring experience. I did a
Yes.
lot of it. I did hours and hours of online presentations when COVID lockdowns were in effect and things.
Yeah.
And I quite like
Um,
streaming. I'm always happy if people are like, hey, do you want to hang out on a stream and we'll kind of throw
Yeah.
things at you and we'll
Yeah.
try and figure them out. But the idea of kind of doing a presentation to a camera in a room by myself, nah, I'll do it for money, but I don't do that for fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
And I think also the way that both of us kind of speak in a live situation, it really doesn't translate well to online. There's a kind of we feed a lot off the energy we're getting from the audience.
Yeah.
And there's just a Zoom screen full of 24 people, half of whom have got their cameras turned off. It's just not the same. So yeah.
So Carl, who is involved with DDD Southwest, says
Yes.
planned poorly with our timing this year. Next jump. Honestly, you can't avoid, the idea that a one-day community event in Bristol on a Saturday has to worry about what's happening in Australia.
Yeah.
This year is just May. I think I got invited to 11 events taking place in May this year, and I've said yes to 6 of them because they just about kind of line up so I can do it all with one prolonged bit of travel. And every year, everyone is like, oh, we got to avoid the clash next year. And it just means next year you're going to clash with something else.
Yeah.
And, at some point, all the events I've ever been involved in organizing, they're like, we need to pick a date, and the venue can only do these 3, and that one clashes here, that one clashes here, that one. Nah, just do your thing.
What DDD Southwest actually need to do next year is check with me when it's okay to put it on, when I'm available, and then I can pen it into my hectic schedule and guarantee that I will be there and not go into NDC Tahiti or whatever Jacob comes up with next year.
Yeah. But then you also get the people, I know a couple of folks who are like, yeah, I was going to do that. And then Microsoft turn up and go, no, you're going to do this. And they're like, yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Well
that
done.
Too. Yes. Okay. We got through more than half of what we had in our shortlist.
So we need to very, very quickly, if you have 5 minutes, there are 2 more things.
Have 5 minutes.
One is you just put the very cryptic S and box, as in S ampersand box. What is S ampersand box?
This is a brilliant thing. The Source engine that Valve used for Half-Life 2.
Yeah.
The version of the most recent up-to-date version of that, it's still just Source. It might be Source 2. But
do you know why it's called Source?
No.
I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay. But yes, so the version of that they used for Half-Life Alyx, the virtual reality episode of Half-Life, somebody has taken that, because Valve make it open source. All the tools and level designers and everything are open source. And they have connected it up to a C# API. So you can use C# to build whatever you want, death matches or things, and you can pull in the entire asset set from the Steam Workshop that is available. It's essentially what Gary used to build Gary's mod, and I think also what the guy used to build Rust or Dust, or the sort of that there was a first-person survival game thing. And yeah, they've hooked that up to a C# kind of API, so you can code against it and you can pull assets in and all this sort of stuff. And then there's just a place where you can publish it and run it, and you can modify the code on the fly while you're playing the game. And so yes, it's S&box, as in sandbox. And it just, I happened to notice it yesterday, and it looks awesome, and I'm going to have a play with it once I have done some of the things that I might get some money from. Because yes,
when Valve licensed the engine from id, because it was originally based on the Quake 2 engine, the folks at id were like, hey, Valve want to give us money for a copy of the code for Quake 2, and so they burned it onto a CD-ROM and wrote source on it in a marker pen because it had the source code on it, and sent it over. And the Valve team got it and went, oh, this must be the source engine.
Yes.
And that's why it's called source.
That does make sense. Oh, yeah, there we go. I've posted the link into the chat. It's showed up on YouTube, and
it'll appear
Twitch
tomorrow
channel
as a comment on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn isn't really optimized for streaming.
Enterprise chat.
And we can wrap up with one more thing, which I don't even want to talk about. I just wanted to say it because I think it's so cool, which I saw browsing Blue Sky yesterday. Synthesizer music used to be set in the future, but nowadays it's mostly set in the past.
Yes. Yes.
Just made me go, ooh.
Because Blade Runner is now in the past.
Yeah.
The Blade Runner, the original, happened a couple of years ago.
No, I remember when synthesizer music was all incredibly futuristic, and now it's all retro. Like all of the synthwave bands that I listen to are all retro. They're all 80s throwback, and it's like, that's
because synthesizer as an instrument used to sound like synthesizer. It was sort of attack, decay, sustain, release, and envelopes and all that sort of thing. And then at some point in the late 90s, the early noughties, synthesizers suddenly started sounding like actual violins and instruments, and you just don't get those lovely Moog noises anymore.
Moog.
You'll
need to know that if you ever want to move to the Netherlands.
I will.
All their vowels are wrong.
Yes, but no. Actually, there are words I'm never going to pronounce right, and Moog is one of them, and tuple is another.
Pop culture has just established that Robert Moog invented the Moog synthesizer, and that's fine now.
Yeah, there we go. That works.
But technically Moog, because Dutch name. So
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in, folks. It's been a pleasure. Any of you who are in Hull for DDD North, I will see you in Hull. I'll see you all in Hull.
I'll see you in Hull.
And any of you
who feast in Hull.
It's tomorrow we will dine in Hull.
Valhalla.
I'm going to go on a road to Hull. I'm going on a trip to Hull and back. Insert Hull puns here. And we'll be back.
Yes.
We're back next week. Are we back next week? I'm back next week.
I'm here. I'm back next week. Yeah.
All right. Then we'll see you all next week.
Cool. See you then. Take care.
See you later, folks.